Gemara on the bottom of Chav Chesam with Beis, where it says, Amar Rav Nachman, 2 lines from the bottom. The Gemara here was talking about the rays of the sun because it was discussing what happened once in the Beis HaMikdash. Early in the morning, they made a mistake and they thought that it was really the sun coming up, but it wasn't. It was the Levana. It was still the light of the moon that was there in the east part of the sky at the end of the month, and they brought the Karban Tamid too early. So that's why they used to send someone up on the rooftop to see, is it actually morning yet? So the Gemara here was talking different things about the sun. So the Gemara brings something else about the sun and then some other things related to this. Amar Rav Nachman, so Rav Nachman said, Zuama de Shimsha, the light of the sun that comes through the clouds when it's sort of a faded light from the sun. It's not that the regular shine of the sun that you have during the day. That's called Zuama de Shimsha because it's like a hazy light of the sun. Kashi Mishimsha. It's actually more harmful, could be more harmful than the actual rays of the sun itself. What's the reason for this? Because when the light of the sun comes out, so it just comes directly. It doesn't have to force its way through. When the light of the sun is blocked by the clouds, and then it forces its way through a crack of the clouds, so then it comes sort of in a more powerful way, and therefore it could affect a person even stronger. And the Gemara brings a simon for this, v'simonach dona d'chala, a jar of vinegar. Jar of vinegar that's tightly closed, and the smell of the vinegar is stuck there inside. You make a hole in it, the sharp smell will come out from that hole very strong because it's breaking its way out from that little hole that you made. It comes stronger than if it would just be totally open and it spreads around. Another thing the Gemara says, similar, shavriri de shimshe, there's a light that comes also from the sun through the clouds, but this seems to be a little bit more of a light that like breaks its way out through the light of through the clouds. Kasher mishimshe, that's more harmful than the sun that shines without any clouds there. The simanach, and the simon for this is dilfa. When you have a drip of water that drips on a person's body, so it's more bothersome than if a person immerses himself completely in a bath and you have water that's completely surrounding you, so then it doesn't bother you. But if you have a drip of water that's dripping on you, so then that's bothersome. Similar, if a person is standing outside and it's a sunny day and the sun is on him completely, it's not as bothersome as if you're standing in a cloudy place and then you have all of a sudden this like little light of sun that hits you in that place. That's more, it could be more harmful. Hirhure Aveda, here the Gemara comes to other ideas similar. Hirhure Aveda, when a person has negative thoughts of an Aveda, and Rashi here says it refers to Taivas Nashim, a desire for inappropriate relationships. Kasher Aveda, it's more harmful for a person than an actual Aveda, than an inappropriate relationship itself. Simonach, and what's a simon for this? Reiche de bisra. When a person has a smell of meat, Rashi says roasted meat, it has a very good smell, so then it could be more harmful for the person than actually eating it. Once you eat it, so you ate it, so then it's mamala the taiva and it sort of subsides. But if not, so then the taiva is very strong and it can harm the person. In Chassidus, it speaks about this Inyan. Alter Rebbe and Tanya mentions Hirhure Aveda, that it's more harmful than the Aveda itself because the Hirur is in the person's machshava. Machshava is a much deeper koyach internally in the person than an action that's done externally. So even though, of course, the actual Aveda is in Maisa, and in that sense the Aveda is much worse, but the Hirur is really an indication of what's happening internally in the person's thoughts, and therefore it's more closer to the essence of who the person is. And in that sense, that's why Hirhure Aveda are more difficult than the Aveda itself. Another thing, Shili de Kaite, the heat that a person experiences in the end of the summer, Rashi says in Elul, which is the end of the summer, is Kashem Mekaite. It's harsher on the person's body to handle more than the entire summer itself. And the reason is, as Rashi here says, because through the entire summer, a person's body heats up, the whole world heats up, and therefore, now it's very easy for the person to get affected negatively by this heat, that it could sort of hit a climax and affect the person negatively. Simanach, and a simon for this, is tanura shagira, an oven that has been heated up already. You have an oven that you have to heat up, and on that day it was heated up a few times already, so it's very easy to heat it up again because it already has the heat inside. Esther, the sisve, a fever that a person has in the middle of the winter, kashia midekaita, is harsher on the person than the heat in the time of the summer. And the simonach, and the simmer for this is tanura kerira, a cold oven. A cold oven, if you have to heat up a cold oven that wasn't heated up that day, you're going to have a very strong fire to heat it up. The same thing if a person has a fever during the winter when his body is very cold and still he gets a fever, that means that he's really sick. And therefore, even in such a cold weather, he's still getting hot. So that's harsher. That shows you how unwell he is. Another thing it says, Migmer ba'tikta, for a person to learn something that's old, that he once learned before, and he forgot it, and he wants to come back and to learn it again. So, kashim mechadete. It's more difficult to learn that than to learn something, a new subject, new information. To go and back to something old sometimes could be harder. And we see monach, what's a simon to understand this? Tina bar tina. If a person tries to make cement by taking old cement and by grinding old cement and creating new cement and refreshing this old cement into new cement, it's going to be harder than if you just take new, fresh earth to create the cement. So the same thing when a person learns to sometimes review something that's old is more difficult than to learn something that's fresh. Omar Abavo. This is related to what we spoke about here with the sun that shines. So the Gemara brings something in connection to this and then it goes into other subjects related. So Rabavo said, my time the Rebbe. What's the reason for what Rebbe said? So Rebbe said before, on the bottom of Chav Ches Amud Beis, that the column of the sun, the light of the sun that comes out, it spreads around. It doesn't come like one column like from the moon. It's a different kind of a light. It spreads around. So what's the reason for Rebbe? His source is from this pasuk. The chsev lam natseyach ala yeles hashachar. The morning hind, which is a female deer. So it connects a female deer to the shachar, to the morning when the sun comes up. What's the connection between the two? Ma ayalazu, just like a deer. This is a kind of deer that has those horns that are. It's not just called horns. There's another name for it. It's called. You have the translation over there for the horn, the specific. It's called the antlers. The antlers of these deers. So maftzila is lekan or lekan. It grows and it spreads out. It's not just one horn. It spreads out and to different directions. Afshachar zeh, the same thing is also with the morning. Maftzia lekan or lekan. It's the sun that comes up, doesn't just come like one column of light like it is with the moon, but it spreads out on all sides. That's the comparison. So in connection to this pasuk, the Gemara brings here other drashas. Rav Zeire said, Lama nimshale Esther la ayala. Why was Esther compared to a female deer? Loi malacha, to tell you, ma ayala zu rachmatzar, just like the ayala, the entry into its womb is narrow, v'chaviva al baila, and therefore she's beloved by her husband, kol shah v'shah, all the time, kishah rishayna, just like the first time she had a relationship. Af Esther, so too Esther, ha'yisachaviva al Achashverosh, was beloved to Achashverosh, kol shah v'shah, all the time that she came to him, kishah rishayna, like the first time. That's the comparison to ayala. Ravasi has a different drasha. Amar Ravasi, Lama nimshala Esther l'shachar. Why is Esther compared to the morning? Leimalachat to say to you, Ma shachar seif kol halayla. Just like the morning when the sun comes up is the end of the night. Af Esther, so to Esther seif kol hanisim. She's the end of all the miracles. So the Gemara asks right away, Esther is considered to be the end of all the miracles as far as the Yomim Tovim that we celebrate. Esther is the last miracle that we celebrate out of a Yontiv. But Vayike Chanukah, there's a Yontiv of Chanukah that happened later in the time of the second Beis HaMikdash. So the Gemara answers, Nitno likosav kamrinan. We're referring to a Nes that's written, part of Ksuvim, right? The Nes of Purim become Esther's chelik of the Tanakh, which is not the case with Chanukah. It's not part of the Tanakh. It wasn't written. So the Gemara asks him this, that's true. The point, the answer you're giving is according to the opinion that Esther was written, became part of Ksuvim, and as Rashi here says, the halacha, by anything that's written from Tanakh, this is a gzeira of Chazal, we learned this in Gemara Shabbos, it's metames hayadayim. If you touch it, it makes your hands shniyas l'tumah. So there's one opinion that says that Esther, the Megillas Esther, has the same status as Chumash and as the rest of the Tanakh, that if you touch it, your hands become a sheni l'tumah. So that's one opinion. That even after it was written, it doesn't have the same status, and therefore your hands don't become tamei. So what's the reason that we're saying that Esther is the last of all the miracles? So the Gemara is going to give another pshat. But let me just first share with you the question of the Marsha on this Gemara and the pshat that the Rebbe says. The Gemara here says that Esther is considered to be shachar. She's compared to the morning, which is the end of the night. So the Marsha asks the question, why would miracles be compared to nighttime? We're saying that there's all the miracles that happen, which sort of is hinted in the duration of the night, and then the end of the night, when you come to the morning, that's Esther. She's the last of the miracles. Should have been the opposite. Miracles are compared to revelation, daytime, and we should have said that Esther is compared to evening, which is the end of the day. And when we go into a darkness of a night. So the point that the Rebbe says is that Esther, the whole chiddush of the nest of Esther, as we know it says in Chassidus, is that it was a nest that happened within Teva. It's a nest that took place within the darkness of Teva. Even after the nest took place, Akati Avdi Achashverosh and Eden was still in Golus, and there was still a time of darkness. And yet, in that darkness and in that place, there was a revelation that came there to take the Eden out of the Gzeira that they were in from Haman. So the whole chiddush of the nest of Esther is a nest that takes place during the night, in a time of darkness. So that's why it says here, it compares Esther to being Shachar, which is the Seif HaLayla, because of the nature of the miracle that happened by Esther. And the Rebbe connects it also to what the Gemara says, that it's nitna likasev. What's the difference between a miracle that could be written and not written? A miracle that's not written remains like Chanukah, where we celebrated Beruchnias, the way we celebrate Chanukah, lighting Chanukah menorah and saying Alanissim and Hallel. So the main celebration of Chanukah is Beruchnias. The main celebration of Purim is by eating and drinking, the Gashmias. That's the main way you celebrate Purim. And also, in Purim, the fact that it's written, there's a physical parchment. You write it with ink on paper, and it has the paper itself gets a certain kedusha, a certain status that's related to the nest that comes down and penetrates the Gashmias itself, just like the miracle itself occurred in the darkness of Golus. That's the point that the Gemara here is saying about the uniqueness of the nest of Esther. So the Gemara now brings another pshat, according to the opinion that says that Esther was not nitna likasev. So Maikim law, so he says the pshat in the pasuk is Rabbi Yamin bar Yefes, like the pshat that Rabbi Yamin bar Yefes said, Omer Rabbi Loza, in the name of Rabbi Loza. Omer Rabbi Yamin bar Yefes, Omer Rabbi Loza. Lama nimshulu tefilas shel tzadikim kayeles. Why are the tefillas of tzadikim compared to the female deer? So Rashi here explains that when it says Amatzeach ala yeles hashachar, Rashi brings a pasuk in Yeshaya where it says Ruchi bekirbi ashacharecha. My spirit within me davens to you. So we see that the word shachar could also mean to daven. So when it says ayeles ashachar, it refers to tzadikim that are compared to a female deer that daven to the Eibishter. So why are they compared to a female deer? Leimalachah to tell you, ma ayola zu, just like this female deer, kol zman shemagdeles, all the time when it grows and it matures, karneho maftsilois. So the horns on this deer also keep on branching out. Av tzadikim, so to tzadikim, kol zman shemar ben betfila, the tzadikim keep on branching out their davening. They keep on adding more to their davening, tfilas and nishmas, and the Eibishter listens to their davening. We go back now to the Mishnah. What did it say in the Mishnah? Shachtus hatamitz. If you look at the Mishnah in the beginning of the Perek, so it spoke about the carbon tamid that was shechted in the morning. And then the Mishnah says that once it happened, that they shechted the carbon tamid before its time, and vaitziu lebeis asreife, so they had to take it out to be burnt because it was puzzle. And then right after that it says in the Mishnah, hayridu kain gadol lebeis atfila. They brought the kain down into the place, the kain gadol, to go and tevel. So the Gemara is trying to understand there the continuation of the Mishnah. Why is it that over here they brought the kain gadol to the beis atfila? So the Gemara says, Amos, when exactly did this happen? Right now the Gemara understands that when it says that they brought the Kohen Gadol to go and tevel in the mikveh, this happened on that day when the carbon tamid that was brought was pasul, and they had to bring it again. So then on that day they had to take the Kohen Gadol to go and tevel to bring the carbon tamid again. For morning. Yeah, for the morning. So when did this happen? Did this happen on a regular day of the year? So leisagya the lav Kohen Gadol? It's not okay if you don't use a Kohen Gadol. Why does it say in the Mishnah that the Kohen Gadol had to go tevel? You don't need the Kohen Gadol to do the Aveda on a regular day. Ela b'Yoma Kippurim. So when did this happen? This happened on Yom Kippur. But the problem is on Yom Kippur, this story would have never happened. Moir alavana miyike. Do you have the light of the sun in Yom Kippur that could be confused with the light of the sun? As Rashi says, the only time where you can make a mistake to confuse the light of the sun with the light of the moon is at the end of the month when the moon, or towards the end of the month, when the moon is on the eastern part of the sky, and then in the morning you can make that mistake for that light to be the sun. But at the 10th day of the month, on Yom Kippur, where the moon is on the other side of the sky, and it's small, the moon, I don't know how small it is, but it's on the other side of the sky, it's impossible to make that mistake to confuse it with the light of the sun. So this couldn't have happened on Yom Kippur. So the Gemara says, the pshat over here in the Mishnah is as follows. Ubiyayim HaKippurim, so the on Yom Kippur, Ki Amar Barak Bar Koi, when the individual that was sent up to the roof to see if it was already light, and he said, yes, the shine of the sun is shining already, they brought the Kohen Gadol to go down and tevel. So what the Gemara is basically explaining is, this part of the Mishnah where it says that they brought the Kohen Gadol down to tevel is not a follow-up to the story that had happened where one time it was puzzled. It's connected to the beginning of the Mishnah. The beginning of the Mishnah where it says that the person announced that it's morning, so on Yom Kippur, that was the time that the Kohen Gadol would go on tevel to begin his avodah for the day. Tani Avod Rabavin, the father of Rabavin taught, it's not only regarding the shchita of a carbon tameh that was done before Aleisa Shachar that will be pasul ela'af malika sa'if. This halacha is true also regarding the malika of a bird, which is done with the finger, with the fingernail. That's the way it was shechted. And kemitzas mincha, the same thing also with the carbon mincha, where you had to take a fistful off to put it on the mizbeach. Balayla, if this was done at night, tisarif, it has to be burnt. Right? And Rashi says that the malika of the bird and the kemitza, when you take off from the flour of the mincha, it's compared to shchita. It's learnt out from shchita. It takes the place of shchita. And therefore, it's going to be possible if it's done at night, just like shchita. So the Gemara asks the question, I can understand why you're saying this regarding the malika of the bird, because once you killed the bird, shechted it with your finger, so then it's done. You can't redo it. So you're going to have to, if it was done before the time, you're going to have to throw it out to the base upsul, just like it is with the carbon tameh that was shechted in the wrong time. However, when it comes to the kaimetz, why are we saying that there's an issue if it was done too early, that you have to now throw the whole thing out, that it's all puzzle? Now, why doesn't the kaim put back that flour that he took off too early? And then, be a mama. And then he can do the kemitza again. Let him do it over again. He didn't kill anything. Just put the flour back over there, and you can do the whole kemitza over again during the day. And says the Gemara, so hu tani lavu amallah. This is the father of Rabbi Oven. He taught this halacha in a brayse, and he explained and he said, klishares mekatchen afila shaloi bizmanai. The klishares, which is the holy keli of the Beis Hamikdash, that kaimetz, that fistful that you took off, you placed it in another klishares. It's mekadesh it. It sanctifies it over there, even though it's before the time. It's shaloi bizmanai. It's at night. It's mekadesh there, and once it's mekadesh there, you can't then put it back. It gets this status of already being separated in a separate klisharis, and now you can't return it back to where it was before. So therefore, whatever is left over from this what was done in a puzzle way, and it can't be redone again.
So he throws that.
So it has to, the whole thing has to be thrown out and to the base upsul, and you have to do it over again. So the Gemara asks him this from a brayse. Meisvei, we learned in a brayse the following halacha. Zeh klal, here is the rule. Kol hakarev bayoim, anything that's a carbon that's brought during the day. Ashir says that we're talking here about the menachis and the levaina and the blood that has to be sprayed on the mizbech during the day, the ketairis that has to be done during the day. Kadesh bayoim. So during the day, if you put it into a klishares, it becomes sanctified. It gets the kedusha of being in that klishares. But in v'chal hakarev balayla, anything that could be brought at nighttime, and Rashi says the example for that is the nesachim, the wine that's poured on the mizbeach, does not have to be done by day, it can be done by night as well. Kadesh balayla. So that wine, if it's poured into the jug of this wine, it gets sanctified even at night. If it's an aveda that could be done at night, it gets sanctified in the keli at night. V'chal hakarev bein bayayim u bein balayla, anything that's allowed to be brought in the mizbeach by day and by night, kadosh, it becomes sanctified in the klisharis, bein bayayim u bein balayla, whether by day or by night. But what do we see here in this brayse? Katani mis, but it clearly says here, kol hakarev bayayim, something that it could only be brought during the day. Kadosh bayayim, it gets sanctified in a klisharis only by daytime. That means bayayim in daytime it becomes sanctified, but balayla loy, by night it doesn't. So the question is, why did we say before that when you took off the fistful, the kmitze, and you placed it in a klisharis, that it became sanctified even by night, and it's too late to redo it again? Why is it too late? If it was done at night, it shouldn't have gotten sanctified. You could just put it back and redo it again. So the Gemara answers, Dilmem, so maybe when it said here that it's Ein Kadosh Likarev, it means it does not become Kadosh to be fit to be brought as a carbon on the Mizbeach. That not, yet because it was done in the wrong time, so therefore it's not going to become sanctified to be able to be brought in the Mizbeach. Avol Kadosh Liposel. But it does attain the Kedusha in that Klisharis in order to be susceptible to becoming Posel. That yes. So therefore, once it got that kedusha in the klisharis, so Rashi here says, so it whatever psul it will happen to it, it's considered already to be kadosh and it becomes pasul. So therefore over here, since it was done at night, which is not the right time when it's supposed to be done, it becomes pasul. And Rashi here actually adds another psul. The halacha by karbanis is any carbon that remains overnight becomes pasul with lina. This is a psul of anything staying overnight. We had this a few times before regarding a carbon that's pasul, so you have to wait overnight that it should be totally pasul. So over here, if it's done at nighttime and you wait until the morning, it becomes pasul with lina. See, even if it only came into the klisharis in a time which is not at zman, it's at night, but nevertheless it becomes susceptible to being pasul. That yes. The Gemara asks another question on what the father of Rab Ovin said. Masav Rab Zera. Rab Zera asked a question from a different brayse. It says, Sidir es alechem v'sabazichin. What happens in the Beis HaMikdash? When was the time that they had to set up the lechem aponim on the shulchan and the table in the Beis HaMikdash? It's supposed to be done on Shabbos day. But what happens if it wasn't on Shabbos day? Sidir es alechem v'sabazichin achar Shabbos. It was set up there on the table, and the frankincense that comes with it was set up after Shabbos. In other words, it was set up on a Sunday. And then v'hikter es habezichen b'Shabbos, the bezichin, the frankincense, after a week, it's supposed to be brought and burnt in the Mizbeach. So the following Shabbos he went and he burnt it on the Mizbeach. Psula, it's going to be pasul. Why is it pasul? Because it's supposed to be there for 7 days. And only after 7 days could it be brought on the Mizbeach. Here it's missing a day. It was set up on Sunday. So because it's missing a day, it's pasul. Rashi says actually, v'li nire, to take out the word pesula, because psula would mean that the whole thing is pasul, and you can't. Once you set it up too late, there's nothing you can do about it, and it's going to be pasul. But really, the Mishnah or the Braisa here is not going to bring an eitzah, something that you can do. What do you do when you set it up too late? There is something you can do about it. It's not going to be automatically pasul. So the Mishnah says, what do you do? Keitzad yaseh. What should you do if it was set up on a Sunday too late? So you don't have 7 days until the upcoming Shabbos. So yanichenu l'Shabbos haba. Leave it until the following Shabbos. Shafila omda ala shulchan yomim rabim. Even if you have the bread and the frankincense, the levina on the table many days, more than the 7 days, ein bekach klum. It doesn't matter. You can bring it the following Shabbos. You'll leave it extra on the table. But now the question is, why are you saying that you could leave it extra time? Tiktosh, once you placed it on the table, so that's a klisharis. You placed it on the table, it should get the sanctity of being there. V'ti pasul, and it should become pasul of being there in the wrong time. That it was placed too early, because you can leave it till the following Shabbos, so it's ending up being on the table out of the time that it's supposed to be. It's only supposed to be on the table for 7 days, and here you will mekadesh it in the wrong time, so therefore it should be pasul for being there in the wrong time. And also the psul of lina should apply over here, that it's going over the time that it wasn't supposed to be there, so why shouldn't it become pasul? According to what the father of Rab Avin said, that if you mekadesh something at night, it becomes pasul the next day, so over here as well it should become pasul. So Rav responded to this question and said, Manda kamaisiv, shapa kamaisiv. The one that's asking this question, it's really a very good question. But here's the thing, Vavur de Rab Ovin, Nami, Masnita Kama, the father of Rab Ovin, he wasn't actually saying his own statement, or he wasn't repeating something in the name of an Amayra. Usually, if you have something that's repeated in the name of an Amayra, and you ask a question from a Braisa, so you refuted his opinion. because a Tana refutes the opinion of an Amayra. But over here, Rab Avin was also repeating something in the name of a Tana from another Braisa. So therefore, we have to answer this. So Rav Avin also sang a Braisa, and therefore the explanation will be as follows. The Kesavar, the Tana of the Braisa, that he was quoting holds, Laila ein mechusses man. When you mekadesh something, and a kli shadas from the night before that day that you're bringing the carbon for, that's not called mechusses man. That's not something which you brought out of its time that it would become puzzle. The psul of lina doesn't apply to it. The night before is considered already to be part of that day. Usually we know that the night is already the beginning of the next day. Even though usually regarding Kachim, one of the things that's unique about Kachim and the Karbanis is that the night that follows is considered to be the continuation of the day before. But over here he's saying regarding this halacha, the night before is already considered to be the beginning of the next day. And if you put it in the Klisharis, so therefore it's not considered to be Mechusas Man, it's considered to be already part of that day. And because it was done before the sun came up, so therefore it wasn't done in the right time, so therefore it will become puzzle. Right? But yain mechusas man. But if you do it on the wrong day, if you bring the lechem aponim and the frankincense on the table in a completely wrong day, in the previous week, you put it on a Sunday, and a week, almost a week before the time you were supposed to, that's not considered to be part of this time at all, and therefore it doesn't make it possible at all. The fact that it's sitting there on the table is pointless, it's worthless, it doesn't have any koyach to make it possible. That's the teretz that he gave. There's a difference between if it's the night before or if it's a whole day before, even a few days before. So now the Gemara asks the question, if that's your answer, but the question still remains regarding the lechem aponim, kimati beishimshi tikdaish v'tifsoil. So if so, when is the lechem aponim supposed to be put on the mizbeach? On Shabbos, right? So if so, the night of Shabbos, which is already the night before to the following day when it's supposed to be put, then you're telling me that that's already related to the next day. It's not mechusas man. And then if it's on the table the night before, it should become puzzle. The days before that it's on the table doesn't matter. That doesn't make a difference. That's like you put something there that doesn't belong because it's totally out of the time. Right, but it's not connected to the time that follows. But from the night before, it should become puzzle. So why by the lechem aponim are we saying that you could leave it there for a long time and it doesn't matter? So the Gemara says, Amar Avina, two answers here. One answer is Shakadam Vasilka. You're right when it said there in that Braisa that he could leave it for a long time, but that the night of Shabbos he has to take it off the table because if he's going to leave it there that night, it will become puzzle. Zutre v'teimer Ravashi Amar. And they said another teretz afilateimer b'shaloi kadam v'silka. Even if he didn't take it off the table that night of Shabbos, kiven shesideh shaloi kimitzvasai. Since it was put on the table, not like the mitzvah it's supposed to be done, it was put in the days before, in a time where it wasn't b'chlal yet related to the time of the mitzvah, so then, nasa kemisha sidrei akaif. It's as if a monkey put it on the table. Even it being on the table, it's as if it's not there, it's nothing. If you did something that was the night before, an Aveda that's right the night before of the following day, so then that's significant. That's already connected to the following time, in the day, where the time of the mitzvah of the Aveda is. So therefore it's done before Aleis HaShachar, it becomes possible. But if you go and you put it 6 days before, you put it in a time where it doesn't belong there at all, so it's like a monkey put it there. It's totally worthless. It's as if it's not on the table. So therefore being there before the time will not make it possible.